gathered forms from the blind hands of my village, Beliator, from the shining eyes of faces painted on clay drums and mud walls, and from the dark palms of the sweepers and the potters who gave me their primitive colors in exchange for a smile: red ochre, white, black, green, the archetypes of the visual field. I did not want to paint the world, but to dwell at its still center. It's my absolute pleasure to welcome you all today for the launch of what is in reality a historic book. As we stand here in this spring evening here in Kolkata, I prefer to use Calcutta, the old name, at the ICCR, the Jamini Roy Gallery, another name associated with the glorious past of Bengal, of course. We are not very far away from that part of the world where what you seem to be sending across continents, across distances, across the horizon are ballistic missiles, warplanes. But here this evening, mercifully, we're only going to talk about the flight and travel of ideas, of images, of empathy, of emotion, of humanity. So it's my absolute pleasure again to invite you all to the launch of Chitrojapon, the Bangla translation of a body of text, a body of poetry written by Constantin Severin. Constantin is a citizen of Romania, and there is a small little story behind this act of translation. Constantin is a distinguished visual artist, a European visual artist, a Romanian visual artist and painter, and he's the proponent of a particular school of painting that he calls archetypal expressionism. Now, my association with Constantin goes back several years because if anybody knows what I do in terms of writing, I have a particular liking for visual metaphor, visuality, painting, sculpture, depiction. And this is something that brought us together several years ago on the internet. And this was not an internet friendship. It grew very soon, very quickly. It grew much beyond that. And we were exchanging ideas and notes. He sent me several of his paintings, early paintings, from a particular series that he was doing at the time, Text and Time. You have been seeing, or you will keep seeing, some of those images running across the screen during the course of this evening. So when he was doing that series, Text and Time, so he sent me several of his paintings and we talked about it and talked about our likes and dislikes and special, places in our heart for certain painters and certain works of art. So the conversation grew from there. And then when my book, Legion of Lost Letters, was published by Black Spring Press from London, Constantin, as usual, was very enthusiastic about it. And he posted on Facebook, which is again such a wonderfully warm gesture, complimenting me, his friend, from very far away. But 3.5 months after the publication of the book, an email landed in my inbox, which had nothing except a PDF attachment. No words, nothing from him. I opened the PDF and I found that there was this, what seemed pretty clear, a book-length manuscript in Romanian. And I said that, I wrote back to him on WhatsApp and said, why have you sent me this? This is all in Romanian. If you could send it to me in English. And then very cryptically, as Constantin always writes and talks, he said that the English text is by you, actually. I said, what? He said, go back and look at the text. And I went back and I looked at that text, and certain words started looking familiar because especially the titles. I could recognize the titles of my own poems. And I said, "Have you translated my entire book?" He said, "Yes, I have." So you could not get a better gift in this world than someone who has brought you into the bloodstream of another culture, of another language. So that was Constantin Severin for you, ladies and gentlemen. So after several years, again, passage of at least 3 years, Constantine asked me suddenly, "You have read some of my poems from the lives of painters. What do you think about them?" I said, "You know exactly what I think about the poems, and I've written to you several times about it." But he said that, "Would you be willing to translate at least some of these poems into Bangla?" And I said, "Constantine, I can definitely talk to some of my friends in the Bangla poetry world and ask them if they are interested." But he said, "No, no, no, I'm not talking about your friends in the Bangla poetry world or the Bangla poetry world at all. I'm talking about you. You have to translate." I said, "No one has ever done this to me in my life. I am a very happily translingual person. And my language of choice from very early on was always English. And I am a firm believer that just because my father and mother were Bengali people, and you have to write ethnic origin being Bengali and all that, it doesn't really matter. As I believe the other way around, just being an Englishman to the manner born doesn't make you a great writer of English." Similarly, I had severe reservations about my talents as a Bangla writer. Severe, and I still have. As I stand before you, I still have those reservations about my talent. Just being a Bengali by birth does not make me almost automatic choice to write in Bangla or to translate from a foreign text into Bangla. I would ideally be more comfortable going the other way from Bangla to English. That would be a better way for me. And these are confessions of a reluctant translator. You might call it almost the title of a book, The Confessions of a Reluctant Translator. So these are my confessions of a reluctant translator. So that is the story behind the story. And Chitrojapon became a reality, had a life of its own. And any talk about Chitrojapon this evening is not complete without the role played by my friend and publisher. He's also a very well-known poet and editor in India and abroad, Debasish Lahiri. Dibbo, as I call him, we were friends from I don't know how many years now. We met, Mr. Devesh is here representing the Sahitya Academy, of course, and it was at one of these Sahitya Academy get-togethers in Agartala, I remember, all those years ago, that several of us, 8 or 9 of us, we met there. Shudip Sen was the one who brought us all together from different parts of India, and the young poets getting together. And that's where it blossomed, connections blossomed, and Dibbo has remained a friend for that long. Dibbo, in addition to being a fantastic writer, editor, and publisher, is also a wonderful designer. Sometimes that part of his work gets a little neglected. So if you browse through the book, you will see what I mean. This was a tripartite conversation between Constantine, between Dibbo, and myself, as to how the book could be designed. So how the paintings, Constantine's own designs and paintings, would find their way into the book. So you will find that as well. So not just the cover, but the entire book. And in fact, he has designed 2 of my other books. I was narrating to a few of my friends before the event today that Dibbo made a joke and said that no more light. When it comes to a book, the next book you publish should not have light in its title. Because I have published 2 books. One was Tethered That Light, and one was A Certain Penance of Light. And Dibbo told me, enough light. Because if you look at those books as well, you will see the skills, the designing skills of Dibbo to the fore. The way in which he wonderfully designed those books, used those paintings. First case, Indian miniature paintings, and the second, of course, some of the great paintings from Western art, of course. So I'm afraid that we tried our level best to have Constantine live on the show. At some point later on, Constantine has sent me a message, a kind of a fail-safe, if everything doesn't work according to our plan. So I will read that message out in front of you. And also, as I said, this is a momentous occasion because this year, 2026, marks the 55th anniversary of the first translation of a Romanian writer into Bangla by none other than Amita Bose. And it is kind of serendipitous that I met not a few days ago in Calcutta, and she's still in Calcutta, someone from Romania called Carmen Musat Coman. She runs a publishing house, one of the major publishing houses in Romania, and she was one of the chief collaborator and students of Amita Bose. In fact, all of Amita Bose's texts, either in Romanian or in English, even some in Bangla, were published by her publishing house. I wish she could be with us this evening, but she presented me with a copy of Amita Bose's essays on Romanian writers, especially on Eminescu. And this year also marks the 176th anniversary of Mihai Eminescu's birth. Eminescu, who is the national poet of Romania. There are several connections, of course, over the years, and we will discuss and talk about that. So this is not a fortuitous connection. This was almost destined. Like what happened in 1971, before my birth. Again, in 2026, the same cycle is being repeated. I remember, and it gives me goosebumps, standing in Bucharest at the National Museum of Literature over there, and all the glass paneling, the texts on display, and I could see Amita Bose's handwritten script, and of course also the printed book, the first translations of Eminescu, displayed over there. And the curator came and pointed them out when she came to know that I was from Calcutta, India, and all that. And said that, see, they call her Bose, B-H-O-S-E. I said, it's not Bose, it's Bose. So that's the story for today. That's the ground reality of today. That's where we are today. We're here to celebrate Constantine. We are here to celebrate collaboration, camaraderie between nations and cultures, between the East and the West, here in Calcutta today. Without further ado, I would like to hand over to Gautam Babu, Mr. Gautam Guhorai, who will take matters forward, the formal part, the first part of today's event, today's program, in Bangla. Gautam Babu, please.
শুভ সন্ধ্যা, মাননীয় সুধীজন। আজকের দিনটি আমাদের কাছে খুবই গুরুত্বপূর্ণ এই কারণে, আজকের থেকে 176 বছর আগে মিহাই রোমানিয়ান কবি, রোমানিয়ান জাতীয় কবি মিহাই এমিনেস্কুরের জন্ম হয়েছিল। রোমানিয়ার সঙ্গে ভারতবর্ষের একটা নিগুড় সম্পর্ক আছে এবং সেই সম্পর্ক যেন জন্ম জন্মান্তরের সম্পর্ক। রোমানিয়ান জাতীয় কবি মিহাই এমিনেস্কুরের ভাবনা ও সংবেদনশীলতাকে যে চেতনায় নাড়া দিয়েছিল তা ভারতের প্রাচীন গ্রন্থ বেদ উপনিষদ থেকেই নেওয়া হয়েছিল। বাংলা ভাষা এর সাথেও রোমানিয়ার একটা গভীর সংযোগ আছে। নোবেলজয়ী কবি রবীন্দ্রনাথ ঠাকুর ভাষা হিসেবে সারা বিশ্বের শ্রদ্ধা ও ভালোবাসার সাথে বাংলা ছিল দক্ষিণ এশীয় কয়েকটি ভাষার মধ্যে একটি, যারা অনুবাদের মাধ্যমে সাংস্কৃতিক বন্ধুত্বের হাত বাড়িয়ে দিয়েছিল। মিহাই ইউনেস্কোর রচনাগুলো 1971 সালে অমিতা বোস অনেকগুলো অনুবাদ করেছিল, এবং সে অনুবাদ এতই ভালো হয়েছিল যে ঐতিহাসিক অনুবাদের অনুলিপিগুলো বুখারেস্টের রোমানিয়ান সাহিত্য জাদুঘরে সেগুলো রাখা ছিল। বিশিষ্ট রোমানিয়ান ভিজুয়াল শিল্প এবং লেখক কনস্টান্টিন সেভারিনের দ্য লাইফস অফ পেইন্টার্স তাকে ভারতীয় বাংলা ভাষায় অনুবাদ করেছেন কবি দেবাশিস লাহিড়ী। রোমানিয়ান সেভরিনের এই লেখাগুলো ইংরেজিতেও অনুবাদ হয়েছিল। কবি দেবাশিস লাহিড়ী সেই ইংরেজি অনুবাদগুলোকেই তার অনুবাদের জন্য দেখে নিয়েছেন এবং সেই মতন করেই অনুবাদ করবার চেষ্টা করেছেন। দেবাশিস লাহিড়ীর এই কবিতাগুলো বাংলায় প্রকাশিত হওয়ার পরে একটা উন্মাদনা নিয়ে এসেছে। সেভরিনের বিভিন্ন শিল্পী তার শিল্পসত্তা, তার জীবনসত্তা সম্পর্কে যা লেখা হয়েছিল, কবি দেবাশিস লাহিড়ী তা স্পষ্ট করে ফুটিয়ে তুলেছেন। আজকে সেই বইয়েরই উন্মোচন হবে এই বিখ্যাত যামিনী রায়ের গৃহে। এবং আরেকটি বিষয় হচ্ছে, আমাদের এই লেখকের আজকে যে অনুবাদ এবং অনুবাদক, তাদের সম্পর্কে কয়েকটি কথা না বললেই নয়। রোমানিয়ান লেখক কনস্টান্টিন সেভরিন একজন ভিজুয়াল শিল্পী এবং আর্কিটাইপাল এক্সপ্রেশনিজমের নামক একটি নতুন শিল্প আন্দোলনের প্রতিষ্ঠাতা এবং প্রবক্তা ছিলেন। তিনি আইওআর ইন্টারন্যাশনাল রাইটিং প্রোগ্রামে স্নাতক হয়েছিলেন। তিনি 13টি কবিতা, প্রবন্ধ এবং কথা সাহিত্যে বই প্রকাশ করেছেন। এবার একটু পরিচয় দেই আমাদের অনুবাদক কবি দেবাশিস লাহিড়ী সম্পর্কে। দেবাশিস লাহিড়ী কবি ও প্রবন্ধকার। তিনি মূলত ইংরেজিতেই কবিতা লেখেন। তার প্রকাশিত কবিতা কাব্যগ্রন্থদের মধ্যে লিজিয়ন অফ লস্ট লেটার্স ও থিয়েটার দ্যাট লাইট বিশেষভাবে উল্লেখযোগ্য। তার কবিতা ফরাসি, ইটালীয়, স্প্যানিশ, পর্তুগিজ, রোমানিয়ান এবং বাংলা ভাষায় অনুদিত হয়েছে। তার 8টি কবিতা সংকলন ও একটি প্রবন্ধ সংকলন প্রকাশিত হয়েছে। দেবাশিস লাহিড়ী 2019 সালের নাজি নানান সাহিত্য পুরস্কারে পিক্স টু মেরিট পেয়েছেন। তিনি মাইন্স নামান পোরলা কালচারের সাম্মানিক সদস্য। ফলে আজকের এই বই উন্মোচন অনুষ্ঠানে অনুবাদ এবং অনুবাদকের সকলের আমরা এখানে পরিচয় দিলাম। এখন আজকের এই অনুষ্ঠানকে যারা আলো করে রেখেছেন, যাদের উপস্থিতিতে এই অনুষ্ঠান আরো আলো হয়ে উঠছে, আমি তাদের নাম বলছি। আজকের অনুষ্ঠানের যিনি প্রধান অতিথি, তিনি হচ্ছেন ইস্টার্ন অঞ্চলের সম্পাদক, সাহিত্য একাডেমির বিখ্যাত হিন্দি লেখক, কবি, সাহিত্যিক ব্যক্তিত্ব দেবেন্দ্র কুমার দেবেশ। কবি দেবাশিস লাহিড়ী দেবেন্দ্র কুমার দেবেশ মহাশয়কে বরণ করে নেবেন। আমি অনুরোধ করছি দেবাশিস লাহিড়ী মহাশয়কে দেবেন্দ্র কুমার দেবেশকে বরণ করে নেওয়ার জন্য। আমাদের মধ্যে উপস্থিত আছেন কলকাতার বিখ্যাত চলচ্চিত্র নির্মাতা, নাট্য ব্যক্তিত্ব এবং সাংস্কৃতিক সমালোচক ডক্টর অশোক বিশ্বনাথন। বিশিষ্ট বাঙালি কবি, প্রাবন্ধিক শিক্ষাবিদ সৈয়দ কাউসার জামাল, বিশিষ্ট বাঙালি কবি প্রাবন্ধিক প্রবাল কুমার বসু, ডক্টর প্রবাল কুমার বসুকে বরণ করে নেবেন কবি দেবাশিস লাহিড়ী। কলকাতার হেরিটেজ কলেজের ইংরেজি বিভাগের প্রধান ডক্টর দীপান্বিতা দত্ত, আমরা গর্বিত বিশিষ্ট শিক্ষাবিদ লেখক প্রদীপ্ত বাগচিকে পেয়ে। বিশিষ্ট শিক্ষাবিদ, বিশিষ্ট চলচ্চিত্র সমালোচক, সাংস্কৃতিক ভাষ্যকার ডক্টর প্রদীপ্তা মুখার্জি। এই বই উন্মোচনের অনুষ্ঠানকে আলোকিত করছেন বিশিষ্ট কবি, দ্বিভাষিক লেখক, সমালোচক ফাল্গুনী ঘোষ। আমাদের মধ্যে উপস্থিত হয়েছেন কনস্টান্টিন সেভারিন, যার লেখা অনুবাদ করেছেন কবি দেবাশিস লাহিড়ী। আমরা ওয়েলকাম জানাচ্ছি কনস্টান্টিন সেভারিনকে।
Good evening, Constantine.
Yeah. Good evening, dear friends,
Yeah.
distinguished guests, dear friends of poetry and art.
Thank you. Thank you.
Hi,
We can
Constantine.
all
Pradipta
see
here.
you. We can see you.
Hi, Pradipta.
Yeah,
Very glad you have been able to join finally.
absolutely.
We are very much
Yeah,
honored
yeah,
to have
thank
you
you.
with us, Constantine, this evening. A very hearty welcome to you in Kolkata.
Yes. Yes. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you once again. So we are just about felicitating all the distinguished panelists who are going to talk about your poetry and my translation or attempts at translation, of course, this evening in Calcutta. Calcutta, as you know, is the seat of the Bengali language, of the Bangla language. You know, this is the place. And welcome to our language a second time. Welcome to Bangla a second time. The first time, of course, is in the book, second time in Calcutta, seat of Bangla. So, welcome to Tagore's place, welcome to Calcutta. Thank you. Once again, Severin. Please be with us this evening.
Thank
Be
you.
lovely.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
It's a great event for my life.
Thank you.
Thank you, Constantine. Lovely having you online. Thank you very much for joining.
এবার সেই শুভ মুহূর্ত, যার জন্য আমরা এখানে সবাই উপস্থিত হয়েছি। এই বইটি উন্মোচন করা হবে। প্রধান অতিথি এবং যারা অতিথি হয়েছেন তারা সবাই সামনে আসুন বইটি উন্মোচন করার জন্য। আমি ডেকে নিচ্ছি দেবেন্দ্র কুমার দেবেশ, অশোক বিশ্বনাথন, সৈয়দ কাউসার জামাল, প্রবাল কুমার বসু, ডক্টর দীপান্বিতা দত্ত, প্রদীপ্ত বাগচি, প্রদীপ্তা মুখার্জি, ফাল্গুনী ঘোষকে এই বইটি উন্মোচন করার জন্য, এবং কবি দেবাশিস লাহিড়ীকে। উন্মোচন করা হলো চিত্রযাপন বইটি। কনস্টান্টিন সেভারিনের অনুবাদ করেছেন কবি দেবাশিস লাহিড়ী। চিত্রযাপন বইটি তা উন্মোচন করা হলো।
It's over to you, Constantine, to say a few words about your book, about your life as a painter, your, or you might say, preoccupations with the work of different painters who have influenced your work, and of course about the translation and our little friendship over space and time.
Yeah.
It's over to you, Constantine.
Yeah. Distinguished guests, dear friends of poetry and art, I stand before you today with a feeling of deep gratitude and wonder, that particular kind of wonder which takes hold of you when life dares to hope. The Loves of Painters is at its heart a bridge, a spiritual bridge between poetry and art, between word and image, between and the inner turbulence of the creator. That this bridge now reaches across Romania and India, two worlds seemingly distant yet bound by invisible threads, feels to me like an act of grace bestowed by culture itself. Yet the greatest surprise has been India itself. Discovering the work of the great Bengali painter Jamini Roy, I felt an immediate recognition. His vision meets, in a remarkable way, what I call archetypal expressionism, that current which seeks beyond form the deep archetypes of the human being. It is for this reason that I have decided the forthcoming English language edition, because this is a short edition with only 15 poems from 25. And the next edition will be with 26 poems, because I'll include Jamini Roy as well. And I think of no finer setting for this announcement than the museum bearing his name. This book would not exist in Bengali without a man who understood it before he ever translated it. My heartfelt thanks to the great poet Debasish Lahiri, who carried my verses with sensitivity and grace into a language of rare beauty. I thank the editorial team at Red River Press for the courage and professionalism with which they embraced this project. I thank all the distinguished guests gathered here today. Your presence lends both weight and light to this moment. And I thank the organizer who have turned a literary dream into a living reality. East and West meet today in verse, and I am glad to have lived to witness this meeting. Thank you so much.
Yes, Constantine, we heard you loud and clear over all of this.
Okay.
Donald Trump, whatever, American warplanes, we heard you absolutely pitch perfect. Thank you, my man.
Thank you.
এবার
Now I can close it.
চিত্রযাপন বইটির সম্পর্কে আলোকপাত করবেন আজকের এই অনুষ্ঠানের প্রধান অতিথি দেবেন্দ্র কুমার দেবেশ মহাশয়, যিনি বিখ্যাত হিন্দি লেখক, কবি এবং সাহিত্যিক ব্যক্তিত্ব। তিনি স্মৃতি সৃষ্টি সাহিত্যের ঐতিহ্যের উপরে কাজের জন্য পরিচিত। আমি আহ্বান করছি দেবেন্দ্র কুমার দেবেশকে কিছু বলার জন্য।
Good evening, friends. First of all, I would like to congratulate Mr. Constantin Severin and
Thank you.
Mr. Debasish Lahiri also for their joint translation book, bilingual edition in English and also in Bengali. Friends, my mother tongue is Bhojpuri and I write in Hindi, but this book is in Bengali translation, so I would like to talk here in Bengali.
Okay. It's a beautiful language.
Thanks, sir.
The
Thanks.
follower of Sanskrit.
Thanks, sir. Thanks. বন্ধুরা, আমি এই অনুষ্ঠানে এসে খুবই হর্ষিত আছি। কেন এই ধরনের একটা খুবই গুরুত্বপূর্ণ একটা কাজ হয়েছে। এমনি আমরা জানি কি কবি স্বয়ং নিজের যে কবিতার অনুবাদ করেন, এই ধরনের লোক খুবই কম। এমনি তো আমরা এখানে আছি কলকাতায়, বাঙালি আছি, এখানে রবীন্দ্রনাথকে আমরা দেখেছি কি উনি নিজের কবিতা নিজেই অনুবাদ করেছিলেন, কিন্তু তবুও উনি নিজের কবিতা গানের হিসেবে না করে গদ্যে করেছিলেন অনুবাদ। বাংলায় তো ওনার কবিতা গান ছিল, কিন্তু ইংরেজিতে উনি প্রোজ হিসেবে ট্রান্সলেশন করেছিলেন। এখানে আমি দেখতে পারছি কি কনস্ট্যান্টিনের যে কবিতাগুলো আছে সেই সব ইংরেজি অনুবাদে উনি তো করেছেন, আর ওনার যে শিল্প আছে সব একই মতন আছে। কিন্তু দেবাশিস লাহিড়ী অনেক স্বতন্ত্রতা নিয়েছেন, অন্য হিসেবে মানে ভিন্ন ভিন্ন শিল্পে উনি অনুবাদ করেছেন। আর উনি লিখেছেন এখানে কি আমি অনেক জায়গা কিছু ইন্ডিপেন্ডেন্স নিয়েছি অনুবাদ ক্ষেত্রে, শুধু শব্দানুবাদ নেই, এটা ভাবানুবাদও কখনো কোথাও কোথাও উনি করেছেন। আর সব থেকে বড় কথা হচ্ছে কি এই সব কবিতাগুলো যে আছে চিত্রশিল্পীদের উপরে লেখা আছে, ওনাদের জীবনীর উপরে লেখা আছে। আরেকটা যে কনস্ট্যান্টিন নিজেরই চিত্রশিল্পী আছেন, আর উনি নিজের দৃষ্টিতে ওদের শিল্পকে, ওদের জীবনীকে গ্রহণ করেছেন। আর সেই কবিতাগুলোতে আমরা দেখছি কি শুধু ওনাদের জীবনী নেই, ওনার সম্পর্কে ওনার যে তখনকার যে পরিবেশ ছিল সেসব এখানে এসেছে। আর কোথাও কোথাও আমরা মানে কি কন্টেম্পোরারি এখনকার যে পরিবেশ আছে সেটাও এখানে পাচ্ছি। সেইটা নিয়ে আমরা এটা মানে কি খুবই ভালো মতন মানে কি এটা পড়তে গেলে আপনারা মানে কি এত আপ্লুত হয়ে যাবেন। কবিতাগুলো কি অনেক জায়গা আপনারা নিজের জীবন খুঁজতে পারেন বা নিজের পরিবেশের দর্শন করতে পারেন। এই ধরনের অনুবাদ হয়েছে। আর খুবই আমি বলবো কি দারুণ কি অদ্ভুত অনুবাদ হয়েছে এইগুলো। আর 11 জন বিখ্যাত শিল্পীকে নিয়ে। আরেকটা কথা হচ্ছে কি অনেক জায়গা যে এখন যে দেবাশিস দা বললেন কি আগে উনি কনস্ট্যান্টিন এনার কবিতাগুলোর অনুবাদ করেছিলেন, পরে ওনার রিকোয়েস্টে ইনি অনুবাদ করলেন। এই ধরনের মানে কি কাজ অনেক কম পাওয়া যায়। এমনি তো মানে কেউ অনুবাদ করছে তো আমরা অনুবাদকে খুবই এইভাবে দেখি না কি আচ্ছা ও আমার অনুবাদ করেছে আমি ওর কবিতার অনুবাদ করে দিই, না, সেখানে আমাদের যে আছে একটু আমরা নিজেই ভালো বুঝি না কি না ও আমার কবিতা অনুবাদ করছে তো আমি কেন করবো, আমি তো বড়। এই ধরনের যে একটা জিনিস চলে আসে আমাদের মধ্যে, সেইটা জিনিস এখানে একটু মিটিয়ে যাচ্ছে। এটা একটু ভালো জিনিস আমি দেখলাম। এই ধরনের জিনিসকে, এই ধরনের ব্যাপার যে আছে এটা আরো বাড়াবার দরকার আছে। আর তো অনেক এখানে আমার থেকে অনেক মানে কি অনুভবী লোকরা আছেন অনুবাদ ক্ষেত্রে। তো আমি সবাইকে শুনবো আর সমৃদ্ধ হব, এই কথাই বলে আমি আমার কথা শেষ করছি। আর একবার আবার যে আছে আমার শুভেচ্ছা জানাই। ধন্যবাদ, নমস্কার।
ধন্যবাদ দেবেন্দ্র কুমার দেবেশ মহাশয়কে। আমাদের এই সভায় আরও 7 জন অতিথি আছেন, তারা বলবেন এই বইটি সম্পর্কে। এখন এই অনুষ্ঠানটি পরিচালনা করবেন ডক্টর প্রদীপ্তা মুখার্জি।
Mr. Guhoray, thank you so much for playing the ideal foil to me, because I am speaking largely in English still. You are my ideal foil for this evening. You have spoken in Bangla so beautifully. Thank you. You have welcomed and addressed everyone, and you have talked at length about the importance of this evening. Before Pradipta takes over the panel of distinguished speakers, I have a small announcement to make, in fact a couple of them, and especially for Constantin. Constantin, our petitions to the Romanian ambassador to India have been heard, and as I walked into Germany Royal Gallery this afternoon, I got an email from him, from Mr. Ilya Tuchulescu, the Romanian ambassador to India, complimenting us and wishing us very well for our event today. He regrets that he's a little late in responding or replying to our emails, but slightly late in the day, but he has sent us both the logo of the Romanian Cultural Institute and the Government of Romania logo as well, so that we can use it for anything that we plan to do with your translation, this particular translation in Bangla, in India or abroad. That is one. And the second is that the Romanian Institute London has also evinced a huge interest in featuring you as a writer to be talked about, discussed, and this particular translation in Bangla as well in London. Because you might know that this is the year where Romania is the theme country at the London Book Fair, which is just about to begin. And it's again very interesting that today on March 12th, they are having a program at the Romanian Institute in London commemorating the role of Romanian intellectuals and writers to a larger European consciousness. So with those two little pieces of news for you and for all of us gathered here, I will hand it over to Pradipta to begin the panel discussion.
Good evening. Am I audible to you, my friend Constantin Severin from Romania? Suceava in Romania, not Bucharest, Suceava. Okay. Can you hear me, Constantin? Am I audible to you? Yes. Okay.
Very good. I hear you, my friend.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Distinguished guests, scholars, and lovers of literature, particularly poetry, I welcome you all to the Indian Council for Cultural Relations, ICCR, in Kolkata. We are gathered here for a very significant literary milestone, that is the launch of Chitrojapon, English poems of Constantin Severin, translated into Bangla by my friend Debasish Lahiri, who is an internationally acclaimed poet, writer, and translator. Before I invite our distinguished panelists to speak, let me take this opportunity to introduce Constantin Severin, my friend, who is a Romanian writer and visual artist. You have already been partially introduced to Constantin, but I think he needs a little bit more formal introduction. So he's a Romanian writer and visual artist, founder and proponent of archetypal expressionism, a highly regarded global art movement. A graduate of the International Writing Program at the University of Iowa, he has published 15 books of poetry, essays, and fiction. One of his poems was included in the 2014 World Literature Anthology, After the Wall Fell, Dispatches from Central Europe, 1989 to 2014, aimed at popularizing post-20 Central European literature on the 25th anniversary of the fall of the Berlin Wall. In 2022, Constantin won the International Poetry Award in Northern Macedonia for the English version of The Lives of Painters. And in 2023, he was awarded the prize on the Trails of Orpheus at the International Poetry Festival in Bulgaria. His novels and poetry books have been translated widely, worldwide, and published in the US, India, Great Britain, Spain, France, Macedonia, and other languages. A very warm and hearty welcome once again to you, my friend Constantin Severin. On a slightly personal note, Constantin Severin is also my dear friend from Suceava in Romania. I was delighted to have met him in Bucharest, Romania for the launch of my book, Living Dystopian, published from Newcastle upon Tyne, United Kingdom. And the cover of this book, Living Dystopian, was designed by Constantin Severin. I fondly recollect the warm hospitality and affection I received from Constantin while I was in Bucharest. Today's book, Debasish Lahiri's masterful Bangla translation of the lives of painters, titled Chitrojapon, is a profound testament to the enduring intellectual and spiritual dialogue between India and Romania. It represents a modern chapter in a relationship that has long seen Romanian thinkers from Mircea Eliade to Constantin Brancusi. In Romanian, he's called Brâncuși, not Brancusi. So Constantin Brâncuși find a reflection of their own quest for the universal within the Indian soul. The journey of the poems from Suceava in Romania to Kolkata in India is rather interesting. The original work, Lives of Painters by Constantin Severin, is rooted in archetypal expressionism, as Constantine would himself put it. But for me, Constantine's collection is much more than archetypal expressionism. They are almost like a stream of consciousness narration of poems. By translating Constantine's collection of poems into Bangla, Debasish Lahiri has not just played with words or played with local expressions or Bangla idioms, but he has truly moved across borders. It is a significant act of border crossing and cross-cultural exchange. In this tapestry of words, I have seen a shared archetype. This exchange between the two poets, one from Romania, one from Bengal, is built on the belief that symbols, whether a brush stroke by Van Gogh or a Romanian folk motif, belong to a shared human heritage. Chitrojapon proves that the archetypal is a language we all speak, regardless of whether we are in Eastern Europe or in West Bengal. And of course, the India-Romania socio-cultural artistic ties have always been very strong because of Mircea Eliade's presence in Kolkata and Moitri Devi's subsequent publication of her book, Nahannate. A beautiful creative partnership had emerged out of Chitrojapon. Partnership between Debasish and Constantine. And Debashish's book is not a passive or simple literal translation. It is an amazing collaboration. Debashish's Bangla does not merely describe Severin's poems, it re-envisions them, creating a third space where Romanian imagery and Bangla lyricism meet. This poetry and cultural translation evening, I welcome our distinguished panelists to explore this unique intersection of art, history, and the craft of translation. And I'm honored to invite our panelists to take their turns to speak, and I invite the panelists to please come and sit on the dais. With the publication of Chitrojapon, I think Debasish Lahiri positions himself as a scholar of comparative literature too. He's already a very well-known Indian English poet with 10 books of poetry to his credit. His Passage sans Verbes, published in 2021, is a French translation of his English poems. His English poems were translated into French and published from Algeria. Tether That Light, published by Red River Press in 2022, my favorite, discusses Indian miniature paintings and was shortlisted for the Rabindranath Tagore Literary Prize in 2023. Legion of Lost Letters, which Debasish has talked about in his introduction this evening, was published by Black Spring Press, United Kingdom, 2023. A Certain Penance of Light, Red River Press, 2025, which was shortlisted for the Wise Owl Prize 2026 and won the Yatha Katha Literature Prize in 2025 from Mumbai. I believe Debasish is one who can speak to the historical lineage of Romanian Indian cultural ties from the 20th century philosophers to this modern poetic bridge. Debasish was invited to the India Studies Center at Babeș Bolyai University in Cluj-Napoca in Romania, and for him it was a memorable experience. In today's panel discussion, I hope poets and critics, we have very distinguished panelists this evening, and I hope that poets and critics will help us navigate the visual world of Constantin Severin's poems through Debasish's art of translation. And I hope the panelists will discuss the task of a translator and also how Debasish translates the rhythmic sensibilities of Bengal. What I found fascinating is this process of translation, which becomes an act of reincarnation because two languages belong to two different linguistic families, and I hope our translator will focus on the specific challenges and triumphs of bringing Eastern European verse into the Bangla idiom. The translator has beautifully navigated several structural and aesthetic border crossings, firstly by internalizing the emotion, secondly by deconstructing the English grammatical scaffolding, and thirdly by rebuilding that emotion using the phonetics, metaphors, and domestic idioms of Bengal. Congratulations, Debashish, for this wonderful publication. Now I would like to introduce the panelists. Professor Ashok Vishwanathan. Ashokda, our very dear Ashokda, is Professor of Practice at St. Xavier's College in Kolkata. Ashok Vishwanathan is a multiple national and international award-winning filmmaker. He is the former Dean of Satyajit Ray Film and Television Institute in Kolkata. Ashokda is a prolific theatre director and actor and a very reputed, well-known poet, and he writes beautiful poetry. Well, very warm welcome to you, Ashokda. May I request you to come and please grace the occasion.
Impressive, Pradipta. Thanks so much.
May I now request Syed Kausar Jamal sir, who is a distinguished Bengali poet, essayist, editor, and academic, to please come up to the dais and grace this evening. Probal Kumar Bosu sir is a noted senior Bengali poet and essayist, and he edits the magazine Japon Chitro. May I request Probal Kumar Bosu sir to please come to the dais. Our dear Probalda is the president of Kolkata International Foundation for Arts, Literature and Culture. He is also the president of Shandorbo Natto Dal. A very warm and hearty welcome to you, Probalda. May I now request Dr. Dipanita Dotto. Dr. Dipanita Dotto is an international academic researcher, translator, and author, and she is associate professor and head of the Department of English Heritage College in Kolkata. She is a visiting professor in the Department of English at the University of Belgrade in Serbia and also serves as co-director of the Tegos Center in Serbia. Her publications span monographs, book chapters, and articles in national and international journals. Her research focuses on 19th and 20th century Bengali and English literature with particular interest in translation and reception studies. Her books include A Caged Freedom, novels of George Eliot, Shanta Devi, and several other books. In recognition of her work, she was awarded the Tagore Fellowship by the Ministry of Culture, Government of India in 2020. A very warm and hearty welcome to you, Dr. Dipanita Dotto. May I now request Professor Pradipto Bagchi, who is a distinguished academic, writer, and ethnocultural researcher and associate professor, Department of Bangla, Lal Baba College in Kolkata. Pradipto da, may we have you on the dais. Last but not least, Falguni Ghosh is a noted bilingual critic, writer, editor, and we all know Falguni Ghosh. So kindly come, sir, and join your panelists. May I request Debasish Lahiri, translator of Lives of Painters, to come and join the panelists. Thank you. Thank you very much, all of you. Without any further delay, I would like to request Dr. Dipanita Dotto, head of the Department of English Heritage College, Kolkata, to come and kindly address the gathering. Thank you, Dipanita Di.
Thank you, Pradipta, for this wonderful introduction. And I think it's afternoon, Constantin. Good afternoon to Constantine, sorry. Yes. So,
Thank you so much. Good afternoon.
yes. So, it's a very, very brief note before we start with the discussion on the book Chitrojapon. I tried to note down a few things rather than memorizing what I was thinking. So I will just read a few things from what I have written. And it's very small, I promise you. As I say it, this book, Chitrojapon, as you all have seen, is about the artist Constantin Severin's journey with and into the life of art and the artist's living experience. Coming to this book
right.
of poetic expression and effort in translation by Debasish Lahiri, I am reminded of the phrasal expression, translation as a language vessel, by an Southeast European Serbian scholar of English literature, Ivanka Kovajevic. Although she said this while talking about reading Rabindranath Tagore's literary oeuvre in a language other than Bangla, the larger literary context remains the same: translation, or the act of translation. Yes, we are aware of the saying that the original is lost in translation. In the case of Chitrojapon, the language is twice removed, from Romanian to English, and then from English to Bangla. So there is every possibility of thinking that the source text is lost in translation. There is another way, a positive way of looking at it that Jeremy Munday expounds as sense-for-sense translation. I would like to conclude by saying that translation not only bridges the ideological and geopolitical borders, but also connects cultures across generations and, of course, time. Chitrojapon by Debasish is one of such remarkable translational efforts. It is much more than a cover-to-cover story of Constantine's body of texts. It is about the spilling effect that Rabindranath talked about in his Vishwa Sahitya, connecting the sense of union in literature and the art across borders. A creative pursuit that offers joy and where daily life is preserved and translated as an art form in a synthesis of the symbolic depth of surrealism and the emotional intensity of expressionism. With this brief note, I would like to end here and let other speakers speak about the book. Yes, Pradipta?
Thank you, Dr. Deepanita Dotto, Head of the Department of English, Heritage College, Kolkata. May I now request Syed Kausar Jamal, who is a distinguished Bengali poet, essayist, editor, and academic, to address the gathering. A very warm welcome to you, Jamalda. Over to you.
Good evening to you all. We have such a good panelists here who will be talking about this book, and we have already heard of it from other panelists. Now, what I was thinking about this book, normally what happens when we translate poetry from the source language to the target language, we take the help of a mediatory language. Normally, we take help of English. Many of our translators, they use English which lies in between the source language and the target language. But here, it is also there. English is also here because Debasish doesn't know Romanian. But the thing is, the good point is, the English translations are done by the poet himself. Constantin Severin has translated his own poems from Romanian to English, and Debasish has translated them from English to Bengali. What I feel about translation, that only a poet can be a good translator. There is no doubt about it, and I believe it that if you want to be a good translator, you have to be a poet. There is no other option. Because unless one is a poet, it's very difficult for one to grasp the idiom of poetry and also the images, the tone, even the cultural perspective of poetry. It's difficult to grasp for him. Here, Debasish is a very good poet, and he writes in, he's one of the important poets who writes in English, Indian writer in English, and that's why he has been able to do justice to the poems of Constantin Severin. The special characteristics of these poems, these 11 poems, all the poems are addressed to different well-known, worldwide known painters. And normally it happens that we sometimes write or just eulogizing a few other poet or artist. But here, all the poems are based on worldwide, world-known poems, artists, like the names are Salvador Dali, Pablo Picasso, Edward Munch, Paul Klee, etc. Now, sometimes there is a problem in such cases that when you want to write poems on specific personalities or persons, you have to think of it as a scheme in your mind that I'll be writing poems on these poets or these artists. And but I wonder how beautifully Constantin has written the poems, and he has associated himself. He has linked his own personal feelings and emotions along with the artists. I can give a lot of examples from the quotes, but I won't take much time because Debasish has done a very good job here, because he never writes in Bengali, as he in his introductory speech he himself has said. But what I observe here, the language he uses, the idioms he uses in Bengali is none less than poetry. And he didn't use the word translation here. He has said in Bengali what we call Anubad. He has used the word Rupantar. Yes, of course, Rupantar is there. I will give you a few examples, but which are for the good of the original poems. Like the one line, the poem starts, Edward Munch, reveal your face to see the face of a thing in its deep intimacy to capture. Now, Debasish has done that Rupantar in such a way, Anabrito karo tomar oi anon, আর চাক্ষুষ করো ওই অন্তরঙ্গ তাঘন মুখ. Now, anon normally we hardly use nowadays, but he has used his, and it's aptly been used here. and goes well with this poem. So that way, Debasish has done a lot of translations here, which have been aptly done by him, like Onimatis. I went from art as a newspaper of the soul to one that expresses the shock of reality. Now, Debasish does this Rupantar in such a way. শিল্প আত্মার এক সংবাদ মাধ্যম, যা আমার হাতে হয়ে উঠল বাস্তবের ঘা, যা আমার অন্তরীণ জগৎকে সম্মোহিত করল উত্থান ও পতনে. So that way, Debasish has felt in his mind the emotions, the feelings of the poet himself, the original poet, and that's why he has been able to translate it in such a befitting manner. I will end my saying this, that sometimes the English translations of Severin are prosaic, but in the hands of, in Debashish's hand, that prosaicness is lost, and sometimes he has done it, a typical Bengali poem, like this part, the last lines of on Francis Bacon. I will read the Bengali part only. মানুষের মুখ আমি দেখেছি সর্বনাশের চোখে, চিৎকারের বিভঙ্গে, ছটপটানির ঘূর্ণিঝড়ের মধ্যে, স্বপ্ন আর মাংসের গর্ভজ বস্তুর অন্তরে, সাফল্যের মাসুল আমি চুকিয়েছি প্রিয়জনের মৃত্যু দিয়ে, সোনা হুইস্কি দিয়ে, তবুও স্কাইলাসের ফিউরিরা পিছু ছাড়ে না। এই স্থূল জগতেও আমাকে খুঁজছে ওরা, আমার হৃদয় এক মুঠো ছাই করে দেওয়ার পরও কিসের এই খোঁজ হাত মুঠো করে। And I feel like reading a poem written in Bengali. So that's why all my appreciations goes to Debasish Lahiri, and of course the original poet who has done the translation from Romanian to English. It is said that in translation the poetry is lost, but it's not always, because we have to depend on translations. Otherwise, it's very difficult to pass on. In fact, in translation, in French, we have a word, the verb is traduire, means to pass on the culture, to pass on not only the language, culture is also involved as translation is concerned. So Debasish has done it he has done it aptly, and with these few words of appreciation to the translator and the poet, the original poet, Constantin Severin, I end here. Thank you.
Thank you, Syed Kausar Jamal Da. Thank you very much for giving your analysis of Chitrojapon. I'm sure I can understand from your speech that you have read the book Chitrojapon in great detail, and it was indeed a pleasure to listen to the way you analyzed the very process of translation which Debasish takes upon himself, and you talk about the complexities, from translating from English to Bangla, particularly the metaphors of translating, the English metaphors to Bangla, translating them or giving them a Bangla idiom. So you do talk about the task of the translator, the challenges he may have faced as a translator, the very process of translation gradually becoming a great act of creation, or rather transcreation. So I really like your analysis, Jamalda, and I'm sure our translator would like to respond to, because he has talked in great detail about the task of the translator. So would you just like to add one or two comments on that? Because he has actually analyzed certain lines from the text and talked about the way you gave expression in our local language. So Just your comment on that, Debashish.
Thank you, Pradipta, and thank you, Jamalda, and thank you, Dipanitadi. Very quickly, I don't want to intervene in this kind of the panelists presenting their ideas to us today, this evening. Very quickly about, I really like Jamalda's summation of the idea of that only a poet can translate, because a poet's relationship to language is like no other person. I know, and we all know, that translation has become a professional act these days. There are professional translators, but who do not have that, share that kind of a relationship with language as a true poet would. So I really like that idea. And to tell you very frankly, I have always said, I've maintained, and I've said this earlier in the evening, that I don't pride myself about the breadth or the profundity of my knowledge of the Bangla language. I think I believe in the French proverb that you can only have one language, master one language in one lifetime. You can be very facile with many languages and all that, but you have actually one language. There's only one language which you are good at, have mastery over, which is for me not Bangla. But all I wanted to do, and Constantine is witness, that I wanted to kind of ventriloquize, because Constantine's work also starts from this act of ventriloquism, where he as an artist is putting himself, an empathetic displacement of himself into the lives of all the great painters that he has chosen to write about. And I believe that the first thing I had to do was to get into that space, that world that character was inhabiting, because most of these poems you would find are either first person narrations or someone who is very close and privy, almost a confessor, or someone who has known intimate details about that painter's life. So, and largely the poems are about a looking back, a person basically making a reckoning at the end of his life. So to get into that mindscape, that was the most important challenge, the biggest challenge of all. And once you can get into that, then I think the language part becomes slightly easier. I'm not saying it's very easy, but it becomes slightly easier. My idea was always to maintain the psychological coherence and relevance with the original. And of course, also, again, honest confession to Constantine over here, I listened to a lot of Romanian being spoken, because I wanted to know what that language is on the ear. You know, I am a firm believer. There is a saying that if you want to be a great musician, you must be someone with a great ear first. A great painter comes with a great eye. If you can't see well, you can't paint well. If you don't hear well, you can't sing well or make good music. So for the same reason, I wanted to hear the Romanian language, poetry being read out, just text, what it sounds on the ear like. Because Bangla has a particular sound. I wanted to know what Romanian sounded like, and imagine what he might have written. I read the translation that Constantine made of my book, and I tried to read that out. So I tried all these little things which have nothing to do with traditional translation, but it prepared me in my work that I did with Constantine's poems. I hope that answers your question. Thank you.
Thank you. It was not a question from my end, but I just wanted you to, as you said, quote unquote, intervene. Your act of intervening was an act of interpretation, actually. Not intervention sometimes becomes interpretation, and probably we all needed that interpretation from the translator's pen. Okay, thank you very much. I have a very small artist's statement which Constantine has sent me. I would like to read that out. This is what Constantine writes: "My work is rooted in the conviction that art's deepest power lies in its ability to reveal the universal archetypes that shape our collective memory. As the founder of archetypal expressionism, I seek to chart a path beyond the traditional boundaries of figurative and abstract art, proposing a third paradigm, one that is both ancient and new. Archetypal expressionism is a spiritual and intellectual quest. It is an exploration of the symbols, colors, and forms that have resonated across cultures and centuries, echoing the primordial language of the human psyche. Inspired by the insights of Carl Jung and the legacy of artists such as Brancusi, Klee, and Tuculescu, my paintings strive to evoke the timeless fields of meaning that underlie our experience of reality. That is from Constantin Severin. May I now request a very senior poet amongst us, Sri Probal Kumar Basu, noted Bengali author, poet, essayist, to come and address the audience. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone, and Constantin, if you can see us. Good evening
sure.
to you.
Thank you.
Good evening to you as well.
Very honored.
Yeah. When Debashish first sent me the book, when he first spoke to me that he has translated some of your poems in Bengali, I thought that the normal regular poems he must have translated. So when he sent the book, I found that it is not a sort of regular translation of regular poetry which we normally are habituated or accustomed with. I found that this is something very typical, an artist's feelings, views, the philosophy he developed about some of the senior artists. I think in this book he has covered 11 artists. Out of that, some are very well-known and senior artists like Picasso, then Dali is there, then Matisse is there, Edvard Munch is there. And there are at least 2 or 3 very junior artists, like one artist, his name is Jean-Michel Basquiat, who was born in 1960 and he died in 88. That means only 28 years he lived. There is another artist, Ion Tuculescu, who also lived for around 52 years. He was born in 1910 and died in 1962. Now, this is something which is not very prevalent in this part of the globe. We normally, we do not find any such example where a poet or an artist, a poet is writing about, his feelings about certain specific things apart from nature. I met a poet an European poet, and it was she, and then found a book. She has written, the book and the poetry book, and the book was written only on the wines, various types of wines. Her poems were various types of wines. So her experience, her feelings, and all this. So when I found this book, Chitrojapon, which in Bengali, and this name is very, very close to my heart because I edit a journal which the name of the journal is Japon Chitro. So when I got that book, I found this is very interesting, and it's just the feeling what a visual artist who has started a movement, if I'm not wrong, it was started in Bukovina in 2001. And
yeah, you are right.
Correct?
Yeah, correct.
And the movement is basically, it's just bridging the gap between the figurative drawing and an abstract drawing.
Yeah.
So that is what, which raised some interest, and I was immersed in the feelings. It's more than a poetry, it's the feelings an artist have about some of the greatest artists or the favorite artist he has come across, or you all have come across. And this really, I felt very happy reading through these poems. More than the poems, I will say the philosophy artists have about his fellow artists. Now, coming to the translation, as it is, translating poetry is a difficult job, but then translating this sort of poetry, which is more a philosophy than a poetry, is a philosophy of feeling. At times, I felt that the Constantin, when he was analyzing one after the other artist, and he himself has placed in his shoes, and he tried to analyze that. Now, translating this is very difficult, more difficult rather, I would say. And this, Debasish has done it quite efficiently. Though his form of translation is a bit oldish, oldish Bengali, I would say, but still the translation has it really makes the reader get the essence of the poetry, because the book has both English and Bengali side by side, and when one reads English and then the Bengali, at least I find that the translations are in a great order. I thank Debasish especially to get such a book here in Bengali, because we were not much aware of this sort of poetry. And the book has been brought out nicely. And I also thank Debasish for inviting me and getting an opportunity to meet Constantin, though it's virtually. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you so much. I was very lucky as an author, because we are both interested by art and literature. We are twins.
A very big thank you to senior poet and essayist Sri Probal Kumar Bushu sir for giving us his opinion about Chitrojapon this evening. Thank you, sir. I have the pleasure to invite Professor Ashok Vishwanathan, multiple national and international award-winning filmmaker, noted poet, film critic, writer, and professor of practice at St. Xavier's College in Kolkata. Ashokda, over to you.
In Act 5, Scene 2 of Othello, the protagonist says, "When I have plucked the rose, I cannot give it vital growth again. It must needs wither." Now that's Shakespeare, and it's supremely visual. I thought this a relevant quote in today's context, because today we are dealing with three media. One, we're dealing with poetry, obviously. Two, we're dealing with art, artistic expression. And three, we're talking about translation. Although I would prefer to use the word, and Debasish will correct me if I'm wrong, transmogrification. Debasish has magically transformed these lines of Constantin Severin beautifully to create something different. It's not that I always agree with every word that he wrote. It is a sort of transcreation, as Professor Lal would say, when he says, "Mrittur shate ghonishtota," talking about the intimacy with death. I would have preferred, let's say, "Mrittur shonge ghonishtota," because the word shonge gives a different kind of a resonance. Ek onno dhoroner onuronon beriye ashe. But on the whole, it is something very challenging that Debasish has undertaken, because the poet who has translated his own work from the Romanian to English has assumed the identity of the various artists. It is as if he is Salvador Dali, talking about his varied life. full of so much of mischief, you know. As a filmmaker, I remember those two films that Dali and Buñuel made in the silent era. The Andalusian Dog, Un Chien Andalou, and L'Âge d'Or, The Golden Age. Magnificent works of art, but surreal, supremely so. And what do I understand by surreal? If you were to ask me, I'd say surrealism, as distinct from, say, expressionism and impressionism, is the unfettered working of the human mind. When the mind is allowed to venture unfettered. That is surrealism, and Dali is one of the foremost exponents of that kind of art. Although these categories do not always hold. When you look at the paintings of someone like Paul Klee, and Paul Klee comes alive in the poetry of Constantin and, of course, Debasish, he moves from the expressionistic to the surrealistic to the futuristic. And Paul Klee is a strong influence on Rabindranath also. And whereas Abanindranath, for a point of time, did not really accept, this kind of an intrusion in the art of Rabindranath. In fact, Abanindranath was not willing to regard Rabindranath as a very serious painter for a time, until later he was convinced that Paul Klee and Kandinsky were artists and therefore poets also. The artist also is a poet. And Rabindranath, of course, is influenced. And the different categories merge into each other. You can scream the name of Edvard Munch out loud, But is he just expressionistic? What is abstraction? That is what comes through in the poems beautifully. There are so many theories, but sometimes the theories don't work. If I may be permitted to be a little less serious, I remember the story of Dr. Benjamin Spock, the pediatrician. And he is supposed to have disliked corporal punishment. He didn't like beating up children. But one day the street urchins in front of his house messed up the cement that he had placed there for some purpose. And so Dr. Spock was not pleased. He told the children, please don't mess up the cement. It's meant for some work. But the children didn't listen. They messed up the cement again. And now Dr. Spock was beginning to lose it. He said, children, don't touch the cement. But the children messed up the cement again. And now Spock lost it completely. He started picking up the children and beating them up. Amidst the howls of pain, a neighbor passed and said, Dr. Spock, I thought you didn't believe in corporal punishment. Dr. Spock said, my ideas hold in the abstract, but not in the concrete. Ladies and gentlemen, theoretism and theorization is all well. But sometimes it's the raw emotions that come through. And in these poems, it's the emotions that take you over. From the butcher's knife, which is a very palpable visual, beautifully brought out in the Bangla also, to the intimacy with death, to the different adventures of these poets. And it's really creditable to this great Romanian artist and poet that he is able to assume the identity of these artists, but he's able to subsume his own personality within the personality of these great artists. Within a Pablo Picasso, whose Guernica seems all the more relevant today, given the introduction that Debasish gave, and given the times that we are going through. I think Shakespearean remark of the dogs of war would be equally relevant. to really talk of someone like Picasso, a maverick, so difficult to really put a finger on, defying characterization and categorization. The poems also do justice to these artists, as does the translation. I would tend to agree with the view that perhaps the style is a little old-fashioned, but that doesn't detract from the essential validity of the poetry. Often enough, in translation, we do go back to the past. If I were to translate, say, Shakespeare's famous Tomorrow and Tomorrow's speech in Bangla, Agamikal, Tarpor Agamikal, তারপর আগামীকাল সন্তর্পণে এই মন্থর গতিতে হামাগুড়ি দিয়ে অতিবাহিত করে জীবনগুলি, আর আমাদের মুখ মূর্খদের মতো আলোকিত হয়ে ধূসর মৃত্যুর দিকে এগিয়ে যায়. It becomes not just a literal translation, not just even a transcreation, but more a transmorgification. And for that, I would salute Debasish Lahiri for this kind of magical, transformation that he has effected. It makes the reading of the poems more interesting. It attracts you to read those poems, and it attracts you to see the art of the great Dali, whether it's the persistence of memory with the watches melting and time becoming fluid and flaccid, or the great crucifixion. The poems incite you, they provoke you, they agitate you. And they leave you with questions, like the famous question that Alexander Pope put when he said, they have created a wilderness and called it a place. Thank you very much.
One fantastic vision. Thank you so much. I had the strong feeling that Shakespeare spoke about my poems.
Thank you, Professor Ashok Viswanathan, for a wonderful illustration of this very act of translation, transcreation, adaptation, appropriation, whatever way you would like to. Yes, as Jamalda says, transformation. So there are so many synonyms, adaptation, appropriation, transcreation. And of course, as Ashokda has mentioned, it is not a literal translation. I mean, you have been able to go into the inner recesses of the mind. And when I did introduce the book to the audience, I was talking about this, getting deeper into the inner recesses of the mind. And Ashokda, while I was listening to your talk, I was very much intrigued because you talked about this very interesting artistic collaboration between poetry, painting, literature, cinema, the coming together, the symbiosis between several art forms, the way they interact and play around with each other, particularly poetry and painting, poetry and cinema. And you do talk about expressionism, surrealism, abstract expressionism, and of course you mentioned to the painters, Pablo Picasso, Salvador Dali, Cubism, of course, is very much there. And while I was listening to your talk, when you talked about these artistic collaborations, I was greatly reminded of Alfred Hitchcock's film, Spellbound, where you have that very interesting dream sequence where Salvador Dali and Alfred Hitchcock, they collaborated for that dream sequence to depict the psychological trauma that Gregory Peck is actually going through. So you did remind me of Hitchcock and Salvador Dali's collaboration in Spellbound. So it was a very interesting analysis, interpretation of this great act of translation, the great attempt of translation. And I thank you very much, Ashokda, and we are very, very honored to have you with us as our very eminent speaker this evening. Thank you so much. May I now request Professor Pradipto Bagchi, distinguished academic writer and ethnocultural researcher, associate professor, Department of Bangla, Lal Baba College. Pradipto da, আপনি আমাদের মধ্যে এসেছেন, আমরা ভীষণ খুশি হয়েছি। আপনি যদি কিছু বলেন চিত্রযাপন নিয়ে আমরা খুব খুশি হব। আপনাকে মঞ্চে আসতে আমরা অনুরোধ করছি, কাইন্ডলি আসুন।
ধন্যবাদ প্রদীপ্তা মুখার্জিকে। মানে ওর বলার মধ্যে দিয়েই স্পষ্ট হলো যে আমি বাংলাতেই বলবো, কারণ আমাকে ডাকলো বাংলাতে। আর বাংলায় একজন কারণ মনে হয় বলা উচিত, তার কারণ যেহেতু আজকের এই গোটা সন্ধ্যাটাই এমন একটা বিষয় নিয়ে যেটা দেবাশিসের করা সেভারিনের অনুবাদ। আমি যখন শুনছিলাম প্রত্যেকের বলা, আমার মনে হলো যে একটা কোনো প্রেক্ষাপট আমি যদি খানিকটা তৈরি করতে পারি এই চিত্রযাপন বইটার। প্রথম যখন দেবাশিস এই বইটা আমাকে দেয়, আমি পড়ি। পড়তে পড়তে একটা অদ্ভুত জিনিস যেটা আমার সামনে ধরা দিল, 2026 সালে রোমানিয়ান কবি শিল্পী তিনি নিজেই অনুবাদ করলেন তার কবিতার ইংরেজিতে, এবং সেটা দেবাশিস লাহিড়ী অনুবাদ করলেন বাংলায়। পাশাপাশি ঝুম্পা লাহিড়ী তাঁর নিজের লেখা ইতালিয়ান, সেটাকে নিজে অনুবাদ করলেন হোয়ার অ্যাবাউটস ইংরেজিতে, এবং বাংলায় 2026-এই অনুদিত হলো সেই লেখা হদিশ নামে। এই কলকাতার বইমেলায় সেটা বেরোলো। আমি দেখলাম একটা অদ্ভুত সমাপতন, রোমানিয়ান, ইংলিশ, বাংলা, ইতালিয়ান, ইংলিশ, বাংলা। এবং অদ্ভুত, যিনি সৃষ্টিকর্তা তিনি তার ওই মূল ভাষা যেটা লিখেছেন সেখান থেকে ইংরেজিতে অনুবাদ করে দিলেন এবং সেখান থেকে বাংলায় অনুদিত হলো। বইটা আমি পড়া শুরু করলাম এই জিনিসটাকে মাথায় রেখে, এবং অদ্ভুত হচ্ছে আমি লক্ষ্য করলাম ইংরেজি অনুবাদে কোনো পাঞ্চুয়েশন মার্কস নেই, কিন্তু দেবাশিস বারবার এটা ব্যবহার করেছে। আমি তখন ভাবতে থাকলাম এটা কি শুধুমাত্র একটা পরিবর্তন নাকি এর পেছনে কোনো একটা ধারণা আছে। আমার মনে হলো দুটো অনুবাদ পাশাপাশি রেখে পড়তে পড়তে যে এই চলাটা কিন্তু প্রদীপ্ত একটু থেমে থেমে, একটু তাকাতে তাকাতে, একটু কুড়োতে কুড়োতে এগোতে হবে। এটা একটা যাত্রা। বেশ ফকির তো সেভাবেই এগোয়, তার ঝুলিতে ভরতে থাকে তার অভিজ্ঞতাগুলো, তাকাতে তাকাতে, কুড়োতে কুড়োতে। কেমন সেই যাত্রা? আমার মনটা গেল ইতালির শিল্পী, যেটা 39 পাতায় দেবাশিস তার অনুবাদ করেছেন, এবং সেটাতে এক অদ্ভুত যাত্রার কথা দেবাশিসের ভাষায়, তার মাতৃভাষায় এটা অনুদিত হয়েছে। আমি সেখান থেকে একটুখানি পড়ি। সেখানে সে বলছে, আমি শুধু এক চিরন্তন দৃষ্টি বিনিময়ের ফিরে আসা নিশ্চিত করার চেষ্টা করেছি মাত্র। আমার ছবিতে আছে সেই হারিয়ে যাওয়া সময়, যার না আছে আদর্শ না ভাবনা। এইবার খুব অদ্ভুত লেখা। হাজার প্রজাপতির অলিক ডানায় ভর দিয়ে চলে আমার এই অলৌকিক শিল্পযাত্রা। আমি একদম একমত প্রফেসর বিশ্বনাথনের সঙ্গে, যেটা তিনি সম্পূর্ণ এই শব্দ ব্যবহার না করলেও তার বলার মধ্যে দিয়ে বললেন, সত্যি করে এই পুরো বইটাই এক অলৌকিক শিল্পযাত্রার কথা আমাদের বলে, যার মধ্যে যতজন শিল্পী এখানে আছেন এবং তাঁদের নিয়ে যিনি লিখেছেন সেভেরিনের, সত্যি এক অলৌকিক শিল্পযাত্রা। আমিও ভাবতে শুরু করলাম যে এই শিল্পযাত্রায় কোন কোন দেশ আমি পেরোচ্ছি। আমি ইতালি, ফ্রান্স, ইংল্যান্ড, নরওয়ে, জার্মানি। ভাবলাম এটার একটা নাম দেওয়া যেতে পারে কি, কবির সঙ্গে ইউরোপে। আমার না চমক লাগলো, আচ্ছা এই নামে তো বই আছে একটা, রানী মহলানবিশের। বইটা বার করলাম, চমক আরো বেড়ে গেল। 2026-এ দেবাশিস যখন অনুবাদ করছে, ঠিক তার 100 বছর আগে 1926-এ রবীন্দ্রনাথ ঠিক এই জায়গা দিয়েই গিয়েছেন যখন 7 মাসের তার ইউরোপ ভ্রমণ। ইতালি, ফ্রান্স, ইংল্যান্ড, নরওয়ে, জার্মানি, ভেবেছিলেন রাশিয়া যাব, সে যাত্রায় হয়নি, পড়ে গেছেন। শেষ করেছেন রোমানিয়া দিয়ে, যে রোমানিয়া সেভেরিনের দেশ। এবং যখন তিনি গ্রিস হয়ে ফিরলেন, তখন কিন্তু রোমানিয়ান জাহাজেই তার ফেরত আসা। তার সঙ্গী ছিলেন প্রশান্তচন্দ্র মহলানবিশ, রানী মহলানবিশ। ভাবতে আশ্চর্য লাগে, কবির সঙ্গে ইউরোপে যিনি লিখলেন, নির্মল কুমারী, শেষ জীবনে থাকতেন বরানগরে। কারণ তখন ইন্ডিয়ান স্ট্যাটিস্টিক্যাল ইনস্টিটিউট নিয়ে ভীষণভাবে কাজ করে চলেছেন প্রশান্তচন্দ্র। তারা থাকতেন গুপ্ত নিবাসে, যার নাম দিয়েছিলেন রবীন্দ্রনাথ ঘরঘরিয়া। পাশ দিয়ে অনবরত রেল যেত। অদ্ভুত, 100 বছর আগের অভিজ্ঞতা নিয়ে বরানগরের নির্মল কুমারী লিখলেন কবির সঙ্গে ইউরোপে। আর সেই বরানগরের দেবাশিস, কি অদ্ভুত, তার 100 বছর পর 2026-এ আর এক রোমানিয়ান কবি সেভেরিনকে আমাদের সামনে আনলেন। আরো অনেক শিল্পী কবির সঙ্গে, আমি একদম একমত প্রফেসর বিশ্বনাথনের সঙ্গে, দেবাশিসের সঙ্গে, প্রদীপ্তার সঙ্গে, শিল্পী কবি, তিনি কবি তিনি শিল্পী, তো তাকে আনলেন আমাদের সামনে। আমি জানি না এটা একটা অদ্ভুত সমাপতন কিনা। এবং যদি আপনারা আরেকটু এগোন, সময় কম, তাহলে দেখা যাবে 1920, 21, 22, 23 এই পর্বে রবীন্দ্রনাথ কিন্তু যখন ইউরোপে ছিলেন, বাউহাউস, যার নাম এখানে বারবার এসছে, পল ক্লি, তাদের সকলের কাজ তিনি দেখছেন। স্টেলা কামব্রিজের সঙ্গে পরিচয় হচ্ছে, তিনি বিশ্বভারতীতে আসছেন। তার অনুরোধে, নির্দেশে, যাই বলুন না কেন, তাদের ছবিগুলো এনে এই কলকাতায় প্রদর্শনী হচ্ছে। যদি অনুমতি দেন 1-2 মিনিট লাগবে। আমি বিশিষ্ট শিল্পী অসিত কুমার হালদার, তিনি সম্পর্কে ছিলেন রবীন্দ্রনাথের নাতি। এবং অদ্ভুত ব্যাপার, যে ঘরে জোড়াসাঁকো হয়ে অসিতবাবু জন্মেছেন, সেই ঘরেই জন্মেছিলেন রবীন্দ্রনাথ। তো আমার হাতে একটা লেখা, এই দেবাশিসের বইটা পড়তে পড়তেই আমার এক মাস্টারমশাইয়ের সূত্রে এলো। তিনি আমাকে বললেন, তপব্রত ঘোষ আমার মাস্টারমশাই, যে লেখাটা একবার পড়ো, পত্রিকায় বেরিয়েছিল। এটা লিখেছিলেন অসিতবাবুরই ভাতুষপুত্র গৌতম হালদার। সেইখানে একদম পল ক্লি থেকে শুরু করে বাউহাউস গোষ্ঠী, এই রাইডার, সকলের কথা আমি একটু জাস্ট পড়ে শোনাচ্ছি। মনে হয় এইটাই আজকের শেষ আলোচনা আমার হতে পারে, যেখানে বলছেন যে রবীন্দ্রনাথের জীবনের এই 1920-21 কেটেছিল প্রথম যুদ্ধোত্তর ইউরোপ সফরে। জার্মানির ওয়েমারে তিনি ক্যান্ডিস্কি, ইটেন প্রমুখ জার্মান স্কুল অফ ডিজাইনের সঙ্গে বাউহাউস শিল্পী ও শিল্প শিক্ষার্থীদের চিত্র প্রদর্শনী দেখে মুগ্ধ হয়েছিলেন। মূলত তাঁর ইচ্ছায় শিল্পী ইটেন এই বাউহাউস শিল্পীদের 250টি চিত্র কলকাতায় অক্টোবর 1922 থেকে মার্চ 1923 সময়কালে প্রদর্শনীর জন্য পাঠিয়েছিলেন। আর সেই বাউহাউস গোষ্ঠী থেকে, পাউল ক্লি থেকে শুরু করে সেই শিল্পীদের লেখা আর এক রোমানিয়ান বিশিষ্ট শিল্পী কবি, তাঁর রচনা এলো। এবং সেই রচনা আজ 2026 সালে দেবাশিসের অনুবাদে বাংলা সাহিত্য এবং শিল্পের জগতে একটা স্থান নিল। এবং আগামী দিনে যখন ওই 1926-এর আলোচনা হবে, কবির সঙ্গে ইউরোপে আলোচনা হবে, 2026-এ দেবাশিসের করা এই অনুবাদ হয়তো 2 কবির সঙ্গে ইউরোপের এই শিল্পযাত্রার কথা বাংলা ভাষা, শিল্প, সাহিত্যের জগতে চিরস্থায়ী থাকবে। সকলকে নমস্কার, ধন্যবাদ।
Thanks so much. I felt with my heart your warm words.
Thank you, sir.
This is for the benefit of Constantine. My good friend Pradipto talked about the magical connections, certain cultural, deep, philosophical and poetic connections that he has outlined for us this evening. Of course, Kobir Shonge Europe. This was a book actually, traveling in Europe with the poets. So he sees your work as the completion of a cycle which started 100 years ago in 1926. And this is again the year 2026 when Rabindranath Tagore, the great sage and the great poet from our part of the world, when he went on a tour of Europe with the countries that your poetry takes us on a journey of. So he read out the list of countries from which these great artists hail, and they were exactly the same countries that Tagore visited in 1926 in his European tour. So, and there was this wonderful book written about this tour of Europe by our great poet, the world poet Tagore. So, and Pradipto sees a wonderful destinal coming, a return almost of that happening once again, when this is also a travel through Europe with poets, with the poet, you, that is to say, your work, and my translation of it coming back in 2026. That is basically what he was saying. And he was also talking about other cultural connections which have emerged from that. Thank you.
Thank you, Pradipto Bagchi, Professor Pradipto Bagchi, and also thank you, Debashish, for translating Pradipto Das' thoughts into English for the benefit of Constantine. Constantine, I think what Pradipto Bagchi sir was trying to, also say is that the English poems do not have punctuation marks. But the Bangla poems that have been translated into Bangla, they have punctuation marks at regular intervals. So he found this contrast very striking, because the reading experience of your poems without punctuation marks and the reader experience of the Bangla poems is different. There is a subtle difference in the reader's response to the English poems and the reader's response to the Bangla poems with punctuation marks, because Pradipto Das says that it actually made Pradipto Da read the poems in a different way. I mean, his reading of the English poem and his reading of the Bangla poems were different. There are subtle differences, and this is a journey which the Romanian poet, that is Constantin, has undertaken, and there is another journey which Debasish Lahiri has undertaken as a poet from Bengal. The two journeys have their own subtle differences, but they converge in the vision that you both are trying to create. Crossing borders, crossing continents, but there is actually the connection of the human mind. So he talks about this journey motif in a very beautiful way, and I like that very much, Pradipto Da. Thank you very much. So without any further delay, I would like to invite Sri Falguni Ghosh, who is a noted bilingual writer, critic and editor, to please come and give us his opinion about Chitrojapon. Thank you.
Welcome to Kolkata, Constantin Severin.
Well, thank you so much.
Can you
Very
listen?
honored.
Can you listen me?
Yeah, I can listen you.
Thank you. Thank
And
you.
you are the youngest panelist. The new generation. I want the opinion of the new generation.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Actually, Constantin, your country, I'd like to translate, and I have already translated Mihai Eminescu 2 or 3 years ago. In one of my books, I have
Wonderful.
quoted some stanzas from your national poet Eminescu before the meeting with Debasish. So this is a very important evening, and I'd like to congratulate all of you, my respect, my honor to the distinguished personalities who are present here in front of me and on the days. And particularly, I'd like to thank Debasish Lahiri, my friend, for giving me the chance to talk about the poetry, what has already been written and translated by Constantin from Romania to English, and Debasish from English to Bangla. Actually, a translation work, particularly the translation of poetry, is not easy at all. Our poet Kaushoda told rightly some time ago that a poet, a translator of poetry must be a poet.
Yeah.
I have
You're
translated several things, several poetry from Pablo Neruda, from Spanish to Bangla, and some English to Bangla of different poets of the world. So whenever I'm translating, I have to go through the very insight and the inner deep. I have to have a journey into the words, into the meanings, into the nuances, into the images, into the metaphors, and into the archetypal meanings, what already we have studied in the university days. And this is not the translation, but the transcreation. A certain kind of metamorphosed text is being presented in front of me whenever we are the readers of a translated text. The entire thing is being changed. What Professor Vishwanathan told some time ago, and he was quoting from Othello, একটি গোলাপকে যখন তুলে নেওয়া হবে তখন কি সেটার সেই রকম গোলাপ থাকবে, সেটার উইদার হতে থাকবে। মানে হেরাক্লিটাসের সেই কথা, দ্য ওয়ার্ডস অফ হেরাক্লিটাস, একটা স্রোত যখন চলে যায় নদীর, সেই স্রোতকে কি, সেই নদীর স্রোতকে কি সেইভাবে ফিরিয়ে আনা যায়? সেই আমরা যখন স্নান করি একটা স্রোতে, নদীর পরের বার কি নদীর আরেকটা যে ঢেউ ওঠে সেটা কি ওই ঢেউয়ের মতো হতে পারে? Whenever we are taking a bath in the river, certain kind of current, in a certain kind of current which is flowing, next time that same current will not come again. So this is the case of translation. What I have experienced through the reading of the book Chitrojapon, I come to think and come to the opinion that Constantin, you are entering into the text of the lives of the painters.
Yeah.
And
I try to identify with them.
Yes. You have a certain kind of imagination because you are entering each and every poet and you are coming out in a nutshell to describe, to delineate, to paint the characteristic of those painters, because you are a painter himself, you are a painter, yourself is a painter. Perhaps a painter can have the chance to access into the imagination of the other painters, how they
you are right.
Yes, how you are feeling. You are a painter. You are entering into in-depth research of those personalities, Spanish Picasso, or Edvard Munch, Norwegian Edvard Munch, or Salvador Dali, or Paul Klee, whatever it would be. But you are dipping yourself into the abyss of the inner text, inner psychology, inner philosophy of their life. You are taking them as the gamut. You are making a kind of reciprocal relationship between painting and poetry.
Yeah.
Painters and
right.
poets, they are very much reciprocal. There is a reciprocal relationship. Whenever we are reading poems, in our mind, sometimes there is a kind of picture comes out, the imageries, the metaphors, and we are coming out from that imagery and writing through the words. The painters are painting by the brush, we are painting by the words. Words and pigments are very much nearer to each other. There is a kind of proximity between the two, words and paintings. That reciprocity, you are justifying yourself. You are entering into the utmost in-depth study with the painters. Sometimes you are yourself in the life of the painters. Whenever you are writing a poem on Pablo Picasso or Salvador Dali or Edvard Munch, I think that your own sensibilities, your own saga of imagination, your sentiments, your emotions, which are very much embedded and mixed up, amalgamated with those sensibilities of those painters, and as a matter of fact, which are coming out as an enriched text, and that text ultimately makes us enriched too. So there is a reader-response theory, or readers and the painters and the poets, those are coming together and which are coming out as an amalgamated text. And lastly, I'd like to go to Debasish's translation. Being a Bengali poet and also writing in English too, but primarily I'm writing in Bengali, my mother tongue. বাংলা পড়তে গিয়ে বা বাংলা লিখতে গিয়ে যতটা দেখেছি আমি অবাক হয়ে গেছি দেবাশিস এত ভালো বাংলা লিখে কি করে। আমি 2 সপ্তাহ আগে ওকে কফি হাউসে বলছিলাম তুমি বাংলা এত ভালো শিখলে কবে? ও আমাকে সেই সব গল্প বলছিল। A man who is writing in English, how he can coin such terms in Bangla? I'm quite becoming taken aback, astonished. একটা জিনিস দেখলাম যে দেবাশিস প্রথমে বলছে আনন, তারপরেই বলছে মুখ। আনন কথাটাকে যদি দুবার আনি একই রকম হয়ে যাবে, শুনতে ভালো লাগবে না, ধ্বনি মাধুর্য সৃষ্টি হবে না। Certain kind of varieties is necessary. This is very much necessary in case of translation for the effect in the mind of the readers. আরেকটা ব্যাপার হচ্ছে যে দেবাশিসের যে ট্রান্সলেশন খুব প্রাঞ্জল, এবং আমি যখন পড়ছিলাম দেবাশিসের ট্রান্সলেশন বাংলা, মনে হচ্ছে এটা যেন একটা নতুন কোনো কবিতা। এটা দিস ইজ নট দ্য ট্রান্সলেশন ওয়ার্ক অ্যাট অল। এই ব্যাপারটা আমার কাছে খুব মনে হয়েছে। দিস ইজ নট দ্য ট্রান্সলেশন ওয়ার্ক অফ দেবাশিস হিমসেলফ, বাট দিস ইজ দ্য কাইন্ড অফ সিঙ্গুলার টেক্সট, অ্যান ইন্ডিভিজুয়াল, আ সিঙ্গল টেক্সট। এটা আমার কাছে খুব আশ্চর্যজনক লেগেছে। দিস ইজ কামিং আউট something strange. Professor Viswanathan was talking some time ago about surrealism, expressionism, and other futurism and other isms at all. Every good text may be poetry, particularly, is surrealistic. My sir of Bardhaman University, Professor Ellen Gupta, you know, Lokhinarayan Gupta, my great sir, 2-3 years ago, I was talking to him. He was teaching us poetry and drama. and everything else. He's a master artist in the class. He was talking that, Falguni, you know, everything is surrealistic, because whenever you are writing poetry or painting something, you are coming out from the very hard and stern reality. You are making another kind of reality out of the reality. You know, Philip Sidney said, the world is brazen and poetry delivers it into a golden. Wordsworth, whenever is painting by the words the daffodil flower. Daffodil is a very insignificant flower. So when Wordsworth takes that daffodil on the paper by the beautiful words, whenever the readers are reading, this is daffodil. So Wordsworth eulogizes daffodil in such a way, and daffodil comes out and making another frame, a new frame. This is Ostraneni. You know, the Prague Circle, Ostraneni makes things stranger. So each poem and each painting, obviously surrealistic, and there is a kind of Ostraneni, significance of Ostraneni is there, making the familiar a deep familiar one, making the familiar into a deep familiar one. And Debasish has done a beautiful, deep familiar work, perhaps, making the English text that is familiar, making another one, another dimension, which is coming in Bangla. And we are the Bengali speakers, particularly in Kolkata, in Bengal. And the Bengali-speaking world, Debasish has done a very fantastic, wonderful work. Hats off to him. Thanks a lot. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Falguni. I'm just addressing you as Falguni because you happen to represent the young generation, as Constantine mentioned. So you are today's youth, so I'm calling you Falguni. Very interesting the way you discussed Constantin Severin's poems, you know, how images have been translated into words, and words have been translated into images. And you are one of those speakers, you know, who has talked about Constantine as not just as a poet, but as a painter. And you do talk about Constantine's painterly poems, if I can, you know, say it like that, painterly poems. And you also talk about the magic of translation, which you find in Debasish's poems, the metaphors, the imagery, the figurative language, the visuals which have been translated into Bangla from English. And almost there is a kind of magic realism that the reader comes across in this kind of translation. And you have also brought in the reader response theory, because the reader is free to interpret these poems in their own way and can respond to these poems in their own way. And that is where we are able to connect very easily with these poems. So thank you very much, Falguni, for your very interesting discussion. Constantine has written something to me yesterday about his poems, you know, and his style of writing. He says that in my practice, I employ strong, pure colors and expressive forms to create a visual language that is at once rigorous and mysterious, mathematical and lyrical. Each canvas is an attempt to rediscover the Tahiti of our inner world. You talked about this inner world, Falguni. So he talks about this rediscovering the Tahiti of our inner world, a place where the real and the imaginary coexist. And you actually took us to this very rich, imaginative world of Constantin Severin, which Debasish has tried to translate into Bangla, that rich world of imagination. So a place where the real and the imaginary coexist, and where every major work of art begins with an archetype and ends in music. Through archetypal expressionism, I invite viewers to reconnect with the secret power of universal symbols, to experience art as a bridge between the visible and the invisible, and to participate in a tradition that is as old as humanity itself. That is from Constantin Severin.
Thank you.
I would like to sum up Poulumi Sengupta's opinion about Chitrojapon, the editor of Chitrojapon. She is not present with us today because of some sickness, but she has sent us her good wishes and greetings. And this is what she has written for all of us this evening. চিত্রযাপন সম্পাদনা করতে গিয়ে আমি দীর্ঘ কয়েক মাস কবিতাগুলির সাথে কাটিয়েছি। প্রথম দিকে কবিতাগুলি দুর্ভেদ্য মনে হলেও আস্তে আস্তে আমি তাদের প্রকৃত চিত্রকল্প ও শব্দের আস্তরণ সহ গ্রহণ করেছি। শিল্প নির্মাণ যতটা আনন্দের ততটাই বেদনার বা আত্মহননের, কারণ প্রত্যেকবার সৃষ্টি করার সময় শিল্পীকে নিজের জীবনের বা চেতনার ভালো মন্দ ও সুন্দর অসুন্দরের সম্মুখীন হয়ে বোঝাপড়া করে তবেই কাজে হাত দিতে হয়। আমার মতে সেটাই চিত্রযাপন। কবিতাগুলিতে বিভিন্ন শিল্পীর জীবনকে তুলে ধরা হয়েছে। তারা গোটা জীবন দিয়ে চিত্র নির্মাণ বা চিত্র যাপন করেছেন, এই কথাটা আমার বারবার মনে হয়েছে। পরিশেষে বলবো যে অনুবাদে কবিতাগুলি আলো ছায়া ও রঙের বিচ্ছরণ পাঠকদের মুগ্ধ করলে আমার খুব ভালো লাগবে। কনস্ট্যান্টিন সেভারিন ও দেবাশিস লাহিড়িকে আমার আন্তরিক শুভেচ্ছা ও ধন্যবাদ জানাই। ইতি পৌলমী সেনগুপ্ত। So,
Deepta, I have an idea.
yes.
Yeah, I think this meeting was so important for me, for my destiny as an author and a visual artist, that all these writings, all these panelists must be included in a book in the future. I hope so. Yeah, it could be a book in Romanian and
in English
Bangla
translation.
too.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
We
To
will surely
circulate in
try
both
and do
countries.
something like this. Yes, Constantine, it's a very good idea.
Yeah.
So many good words have been exchanged this evening. So many valuable opinions have been foregrounded this evening. And we are very happy with the suggestion you have come up with. We will definitely keep that in mind, and I'm sure Debashish will carry forward this idea in the months to come. Yes, thank you.
For me, the meeting with you was more important than any international prize as an author. It was wonderful. I learned a lot from you. Thank you to all the panelists.
Okay, thank you very much. And since Debashish has invited me also as a panelist, not just as the moderator of this panel, I think I should give just a few comments on this very beautiful act of translation. In his poetry collection, Constantine often structures his poems as associative flows of thought rather than linear narratives. Panelists have discussed this associative flow of thoughts and this deliberate lack of linear narrative, which resembles, as I call it, the stream of consciousness technique developed in modernist literature. Of course, we are from the Department of English Literature, and we would all know that Virginia Woolf, James Joyce, Dorothy Richardson, they were the ones who actually were the pioneers of this stream of consciousness method of narration, where the text attempts to reproduce the continuous movement of thoughts, memories, and impressions in the mind. Now, what I found in the lives of painters is this stream of consciousness appears through several stylistic features. Most of the stylistic features have been analyzed in detail by our panelists this evening, but what I found interesting is the poems move from one painter to symbol to visual image, then to another, mimicking the way the mind moves or jumps between artistic memories and cultural references. Instead of a strict narrative progression, the poems often unfold in fragmented reflections. I don't know whether Debashish will agree to this, the way I'm trying to put it. Fragmented reflections where thoughts, historical references, and visual impressions, they all commingle, intermingle. And the poetic voice seems to reflect the inner mental process of contemplating art, artists, and creative experience. And there is this beautiful interplay of memory and art history. And Severin and Debashish, they blend personal reflection with art historical references, creating a mental landscape where painters, symbols, and cultural archetypes appear almost like thoughts passing through consciousness. Thank you.
Beautiful. Thanks so much.
May I now request our translator, my dear friend Debasish Lahiri, to give his opinion about the very act of translation. It's a very complex process. We have all talked about this complex process, but it is best to hear it from you directly.
We are well beyond our stipulated time as well. So I think this is also going to be parting comments for this evening, Constantine. And I would begin, of course, by thanking our wonderful anchor who has moderated this panel with such elan and such grace for her very perceptive comments this evening with regard to Constantine's poetry and my attempts at translation. I thank Mr. Devendra Devesh, who has patiently sat through the evening's proceedings, the Eastern Region Secretary of the Sahitya Academy, for gracing this occasion. I will thank each and every, although they are not on stage at this point, but each and every one of the panelists, Mr. Ashok Vishwanathan, Syed Kausar Jamal, Prabal Kumar Boshu, my friend Pradipto Bagchi, Dr. Dipanita Dotto, and of course Falguni Ghosh. Yes, I'll come to that. And Paulumi, who didn't make it because there is a medical emergency, of course, but she has wished us well, and she has very kindly sent a message which Pradipta read out for all of us this evening. So, and also my thanks to ICCR, to the office, to Mr. Sharupam Ball for being such a wonderful coordinator and his courteous assistance and everything. To the Inspirare Arts Foundation, which has not only brought this evening together, curated this evening together, but also brought this book into reality. So thank you, Inspirare Arts Foundation, and of course also the Riverine Muse Trust. The Riverine Muse, as you might know, some of you might know, that is a new kid on the block. It's a new literature and culture magazine. It's a biannual kind of a magazine, international biannual magazine, print magazine. So we are just on the cusp of the spring issue, the 5th issue that is coming out. It's going to come out by the end of March. So the Riverine Muse Trust for again sponsoring, helping out on this for this evening's proceedings, and of course the audience. Again, the audience is non-existent, but there were a lot of people here, so we thank you for coming here, taking the trouble of coming here, because literature and arts is what came to be known after the pandemic as the non-essential, one of the non-essentials. The word went around that something was essential and these were the non-essentials. So we are dealing with non-essentials, but we are not. We're definitely not. And our voice is not non-essential, as Constantine will, I think, agree. All of us will agree. So in the great banner of William Shakespeare, I will end not with the words of Mercury, but with the words of Apollo. When Constantine heard from me that this particular event was being organized in the Jamini Roy Gallery, the artist in Constantine jumped at it, I think, and he read and he saw and absorbed a lot of Jamini Roy's art. And lo and behold, a couple of days ago, this wonderful poem, a new one perhaps, as he said, which might be added to the future editions of Lives of Painters, this poem on Jamini Roy landed. I'm not going to read the entire poem, but only small sections from the poem for you. And that is where we will end this evening. So here goes. Jamini Roy. I gathered forms from the blind hands of my village, Beliator, from the shining eyes of faces painted on clay drums and mud walls, and from the dark palms of the sweepers and the potters who gave me their primitive colors in exchange for a smile, red ochre, white, black, green, the archetypes of the visual field. I did not want to paint the world, but to dwell at its still center. I learned more from anonymous craftsmen than from Rembrandt. A painted clay figure from Bankura holds more sky than all the heavens rendered in Western painting. I felt that the archetype does not live in museums, but in simple hands, those who share with God the gesture of making without knowing it. The eye of a bird, the eye of a lofty cow, the eye of a Christ from Bihar, all graze from my canvas with the same stillness that precedes words. Someone will come perhaps from a distant land of beached forests and will recognize in my heavy, certain lines the simple impulse to seek beyond form the original gaze of things, their expression from before history, from before the fall. We both sought the archetype. He in Bukovina, I to Bengal, with different instruments on the same canvas.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Constantine, for staying with us this entire evening. Thank you so much. Wonderful to see you again, and we'll talk again. Bye bye from Kolkata.
Bye.
Bye.